Alrighty, hello there once again. Eric Padden, and on this video, we're going to be discussing are precious metals in a bubble? A lot of people believe that just, for example, in the case of silver, you've seen in the last 12 months, it's gone up over 100%. I mean, just in the last couple years, you've seen silver go from, say, $12 an ounce to around $37 an ounce, as this video is being made here in late March 30th of 2011. And of course, gold in the last 12 months has gone up 28%. And so I think myself personally, there's a lot of upside. And if you've looked into some of my other videos, why silver, why now, I discuss some of the fundamentals. And to keep this short and sweet here, bottom line, let's look at 1950, when above ground you had about 10 billion ounces of silver available on the planet, only about maybe a billion ounces of gold. Okay, and so it made sense at that time that gold was about 10 times as expensive, and of course it ranges. Sometimes it can be as much as 10 to 16. The historic ratios are about between 10 and 1 to 16 to 1, as far as how many ounces of silver it takes to buy an ounce of gold. And so it always made sense. I mean, there was some logic to it. And yet, if you look currently, what's going on, because all that silver that we had that surplus in 1950 has been used up. Basically, since 1991, we've actually been using more silver as it picks up in more uses as an industrial metal, and now more people are waking up and investing in silver as well. And so what's happening is that silver has now been depleted to the point where it's gone from 10 billion ounces above ground in 1950 to you're looking today at roughly about a billion. Some people think it's as little as 600 million, or I should say 500 or 600 million ounces above ground silver. Now, because gold, ever since 1950, that billion ounces we talked about, because gold is more expensive and therefore mined more, and it's hoarded, it's not used up as an industrial metal, you're looking currently, as we speak in 2011, at around 7 billion ounces of gold that's available on the planet. Compare that to the, say, billion, or most estimates are less, of physical silver, and kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because right now, we've had a lot of manipulation in the precious metals markets to the point where 7 billion ounces of gold, 1 billion ounces of silver. Silver's being used up at a dramatic level, gold's being hoarded away. So how then can we have current ratios as far as value where it takes 40 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold? It just doesn't make any sense, does it? And so what we'll be talking about on this video is how silver, in my opinion, is the place to put your money at. And if you want to look at it from a long-term historical perspective, you're looking all through time, somewhere between that 10 to 1 and 16 to 1 ratio, okay? And so the challenge is that right now we're coming to the end of one of the cycles. And if you're a history buff at all, and you know about debt-based currencies, there's been over 3,800 debt-based currencies that they've been able to record that have all crashed, okay? Now there are some fiat currencies that have survived for long periods of time. You might be aware there was times in Rome where they had very healthy economies with, very cheap, metals, whether it be copper or what have you. Also, there was a 700-year stretch in England, where they used the little sticks. I forgot exactly what they call them, but anyway, bottom line was, because it was disciplined and it was controlled, the fiat currencies were healthy over a long period of time. But what made them feasible and sustainable was the fact that they were created without interest. Okay, what makes this and all other debt-based currencies, not sustainable, is that the moment money is created, its actual creation through, say, Federal Reserve and modern banking, there's interest being charged. Okay, and whenever you charge interest on the creation of money, rather than in our Constitution, it should be done through the Treasury Department, and it should be created without interest. Okay, but it's not. Even though those laws are still on the books and technically they should still be observed, they're not. The bankers have worked their way in and weaseled their way in and now created these Federal Reserve systems, where bottom line is, you're looking at a debt-based currency that, in my opinion, is coming to the point where we're banging up against where all the resources that we have, are banging up against the interest on the debt. And much like if, you can't pay the interest on your credit cards, and, eventually you're going to go bankrupt, right? Well, you might be aware they just had to raise the debt ceiling so we could get a new credit card to keep the, debt bubble going. Well, they don't go on forever. And when China says, I'm not buying your T-bills to fund your economy anymore, no one, out there really wants to buy the dollars because they don't believe we can pay them back. What happens in cases like this historically is the government's basically trying to inflate the currencies to inflate their way out of the debt, okay? So, unfortunately, the average person holding those currencies loses value. And so whenever that happens historically, the smart money always finds its way into precious metals. And so, is gold and silver in a bubble? It's a good question. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you, if you look at the fundamentals, you look at the timing in history, that we're coming to the end of what I believe is the biggest debt bubble in the history of mankind. I mean, nobody can argue that there's more, fiat currency out there, and we're not just talking dollars, even though there's tons and tons of those. We've literally doubled the dollars on the planet in the last 2 years. Bailouts and stimulus programs and quantitative easing. Most people understand that the more money they create and put into circulation, the more it dilutes the value of all the dollars in our wallets, our checking accounts, our 401ks. And so I believe, as a result of people waking up and going into precious metals, that there's a tremendous upside still, with both gold and silver. It's my belief that silver has more of an upside, because when we're at 40 to 1 right now, and the real physical ratio is 7 billion ounces of gold and 1 billion ounces of silver, we're using about 1 billion ounces of silver every year. Last year we only mined about 650 million. And so if you look at using 1 billion, mining 650 million, that's going negative. Well, there's no more surplus. That 50 billion ounce surplus we had, or I'm sorry, 10 billion ounce surplus we had in 1950, it's already been drained. It's gone. It's not there anymore. So the fundamentals of silver, I think, are going to drive it up, and much like palladium used to be worth more than platinum, and now platinum is worth more than palladium, I think we're going to see a similar dynamic in the short term in the precious metals market with gold and silver. Now long term, when silver becomes more profitable to mine, there is still in the planet, in the earth, there's still about a 10 to 1 ratio, they estimate. Sometimes you hear 8 to 1, but bottom line, there's more silver in the planet than gold. But because it hasn't been cost effective to mine it, anybody that's mining silver, everybody that mines silver specifically is doing it at a loss. It's the big mines that go after the zinc and other metals, and then silver is kind of a byproduct of that get us most of that 650 million ounces we got last year. But if you consider all the new ways that silver can be used, and you consider that the gap between the 40 to 1 is so big, I believe that both silver and gold are going up, but that silver continues to close that gap because of the physical realities and the demand. So I think that there's a lot of upside. Now, whether there's a bubble or not, I couldn't say. I do believe that we're in the beginning of what could be the biggest commodity bubble the world has ever seen, because all that money that went into dot-coms and then went into real estate, well, they've created more money now than ever before, and then all that money has to go somewhere. And so it's looking, where am I going to get the best return? Well, right now, most people are aware there's a major shortage out there in the commodities. The floods, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the freezes, all the things that are going on, the droughts out there. They're creating a scenario where the storage of food all around the world is extremely low. And of course the demand's always picking up. So I believe commodities is going to be a huge bubble. And of course on the back end, like most bubbles, what goes up will come down eventually. Silver, however, I believe, because of the fundamentals, won't have the dramatic drop that some of the other commodities will. Now, this is just my opinion, based on my own research, so I encourage you to do your own. I'm certainly not a professional, I don't have a securities license, but I'm sharing with you what I find to be, some of the realities of the current world we live in here in 2011. And so my opinion is, maybe it's a bubble, maybe it's not. I think it's early enough now that there's so much of an upside. I mean, even if it is a bubble, look what happened with, the dot-com. It wasn't overnight, right? It took years. Real estate bubble, it wasn't overnight, it took years. So we're so early on that I feel very comfortable converting my paper, which I know is going down faster than ever before, just because of all the paper that they're printing, right? And they don't even print anymore, by the way. They just key it in and create it out of thin air, right? So that's a whole other video I'm going to do on fractional reserve banking, debt-based currency. If you're not familiar with how that works, you look on my blog at isncoinsbusiness.com, and under the economy heading, go down there, or you can go in the blog section, blog posts, and look at the video, Money as Debt. It's a neat little eye-opener, and it's going to help you understand our current debt-based system that we're in, and how it's certainly not sustainable. And so you need to position yourself, in my opinion, and convert that paper into precious metals while you still can, while the paper still has some value. So anyway, it's up to the history to decide what's going to happen as far as whether precious metals are in a bubble or not right now. My opinion is you should be definitely getting into precious metals, and then on some of my other videos, like when to sell, you can kind of get my own personal strategy on when to sell, because I'm not holding on forever, but I do want to convert paper to precious metals, in my case silver, to help preserve my wealth as the dollars wind down and become less and less, and eventually, in my opinion, worthless, I will be in a much better position, as you would, in my opinion, being in precious metals. So if you'd like to learn more about how to protect your own purchasing power and maybe get involved in either the business where you can actually help other people put silver away, ISN Coins has a great way to do that where you can build a residual income. If you just want bullion, I will help you get bullion at wholesale. You just give me a call, 858-705-2487, or you can jump on my blog, isncoinsbusiness.com, and go ahead and take a look. Educate yourself. Whether you do it with me or through some other resource, I highly encourage you to start putting some physical silver away, as well as putting food away. And there's going to come a time in the not too far out future where the silent majority in America is going to have to step up and take this country back from these greedy banksters, and basically the country has become an oligarchy. And so part of the reason I'm doing these videos is not just to help you guys hopefully get silver to protect your purchasing power for you and your family's long-term financial security, but also to help educate and hopefully inspire people that the time is coming to take our country back. There's been 6 times in our history that they fought back and got control. Whether it was with Benjamin Franklin and the colonial script, which was a non-debt-based currency. That's why they had such a stretch of prosperity there. Whether it was with a lot of people know that Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated because he was getting rid of those greedy banksters and going to his own greenbacks, which was a currency that was created without debt. Whenever you go through stretches in history that countries create their currencies without debt, it's always the most prosperous periods. There was a stretch in hundreds of years in Rome before Caesar went to gold and ended up ruining everything. Or if you look at the stretch in England, a 700-year stretch where they had a non-debt-based currency, the most prosperous times in history for them. So we need to get that done, but it's going to get a lot worse as this current debt-based system crashes before it gets any better. So make sure and try and ride this, whether it's a bubble or not, ride this upstream that we're going to have in precious metals to position yourself, because I guarantee you, gold, silver, you're going to be way better off than holding on to that paper. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Eric Padden signing out. If you appreciate my videos, please do give me a like, and I'd love to hear your comments. And I want to network. I want to build a network of basically patriots. We need to wake each other up, wake up our friends and family, and educate ourselves, position ourselves so we can come out of this mess in a position of strength and then rebuild. But I do think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, and we need to be able to get through that in order to come out the other side. So thanks again for your time, and make it a great day. I'll catch up with you on the next video.